Welcome to the Business Growth Spotlight, where we shine the light and talk with business leaders from all over the world to share their insight and expertise so we can all grow together. I'm your host, Heidi and the co-founder of the Spotlight to Scale Accelerator, where we help businesses drive revenue by making sure they're seen as the authority and go-to expert in their industry versus just another product or service. And today we are having a conversation that is near and dear to my heart, and I'm really excited to be diving in with this gentleman today because I have children and I'm always worried about the safety of my children. Welcome, David Chase, to the Business Growth Spotlight. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here and be part of it and talk about Ministry Safe and business and all the other things.
Yeah, so you're with Ministry Safe. Can you share with us a little bit about who you are, what Ministry Safe is, and your role that you play within Ministry Safe?
Yeah, absolutely. So I serve as Director of Operations, which really, it's the last bullet on any job description that matters. It's other duties as assigned. So that's often what I'm doing. But Ministry Safe is, it found its origins in a husband and wife attorneys, and they were representing actually victims of child abuse, sex abuse. And they just said, this is awful. How do we get in front of this? How do we not do this again? And so they said, let's go on the prevention side. And so in the 90s, late 90s, they started Ministry Safe. It's taken on a new form in many ways, but it started just as training, what you should and shouldn't do around kids, but also what to look for. That's a big part of it in terms of knowing how to identify people that are perpetrators. And then it evolved into background checks as well. But really what we do is we serve child serving organizations. 90% of those are churches, but we have two sister brands, if you will, two kind of cousins of it all. So Ministry Safe is the overarching umbrella. But then we have Ministry Safe, and that really serves churches and kids. And then we have Abuse Prevention Systems, which is really more I guess we'll say secular side of things, but it serves kids, child serving organizations, youth sports, that kind of thing. Maybe summer camp that's not a Christian camp. So abuse prevention systems. And then we also have a focus on adults too. So we have protecting vulnerable adults, which is really elder care, hospice, those kind of things, because they get abused as well. And so how can we prevent that and care for people better? So yeah, I oversee all those, Director of Operations, and we have about 50 employees here in West Fort Worth, and we're nationwide and in a few other countries too.
So you've grown to become a pretty big organization.
Yeah. We've probably done 1 million background checks. We've done about 5 million trainings. And yeah, it just continues to grow. And the founders would love to close the doors, frankly. Yeah. They would love to say the problem is gone. We can close the doors, but it's not. Sin is real, right? People do bad things all the time. And so we're still here.
Yeah, and I'm really grateful for the founders to have started this. And I can only imagine, as lawyers and attorneys, what they saw and heard when they were representing these children. So I'm really glad that they found this passion and this mission to go deeper into it and go, let's try to work to create a solution. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions organizations have about child protection and abuse prevention?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So often, I'm a strong, active believer and active in a church. And so I'll speak often from a church framework, from a church perspective. This is true in any place that serves kids. So often we do the things that we think are going to protect kids, but really what we're doing is we're protecting from one very small part of child endangerment. And that's the abductor, right? That whole white van kind of approach. So like in a church setting, you may have matching name tags and you're going to have, all these different kind of check-in systems and safety things. But really all that does is that protects from an abductor, which is really the smallest version of this, smallest portion of any kind of child endangerment. But what's really needed is to actually focus on the adult, right? The adult perpetrator, the way that adults can abuse kids. But what we're also seeing on the rise, and this is the horrible thing is, and this is kind of a direct result from COVID. During lockdown, all that, many of the adult perpetrators were in homes with their own children. And they otherwise had these kind of safety systems, these checks and balances. Maybe they weren't going to abuse their own kids. Maybe they weren't even abusing any kids at that time because they had counselors they could work with, or the kids had school counselors and prevention measures in place. But The kids that were locked up with their parents who happened to be abusers, and they abused their own children. And now, 3, 4, 5 years later, those kids who are now 10 years old are abusing younger kids. So the peer-to-peer side of things. So people just don't often think about, no, my little son is going to go into the bathroom, the locker room, wherever with, an older boy. And the peer-to-peer abuse, though, is on the rise. And it's a horrible thing, but it's something that everyone's got to think about. So we often think about the abductor, but that's not really the big threat. It's people that we have been groomed to believe are really helpful and friendly, and they've groomed you, the gatekeeper, right? The parent or the person over the program at the child sports or school or wherever. They've groomed the gatekeepers, they've groomed the children, but there's also now the peer-to-peer. Just an awareness of all the things that are actually happening and not what we think is just my kid's going to be abducted. Yes, that does happen. It's horrible, but that's very few and far between compared to all the other abuse that happens.
Yeah, I had no idea like there's this repercussion of COVID. And so that's definitely thank you for sharing that, because I don't think a lot of people, I think more people are like me. They weren't aware that this was happening, and it's still happening, and we're still seeing the repercussions and the fallout of that. And again, it's now I'm like thinking, okay, what about my children, and they're in schools, and what are they doing that I'm not around to protect them, and what do I need to, what are some conversations? Okay, this wasn't in my list, but now I'm going to have this. I'm going to ask you, what are some of the conversations as parents now, because you shared that, like that we could be having are there certain things that we can be talking with our children about to make them aware? So if they are approached and they're more aware of what could possibly be out there happen.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah, and this is one of the big things so I'm going to come back to what we have with the conversations we have with the kids. But the training side of things, and again, that's the bulk of what we have done historically as an organization, is training. And there's this 3P approach, I say. The reason we do training is because once you know what to look for, behaviors are predictable. And if they are predictable, then you're going to be able to identify a pattern, right? Or I'm sorry, there's a pattern and that becomes predictable. You can identify the patterns in people, and that's predictable. And then if it's predictable, it's preventable as well. And so we have to be vigilant as parents, as people that care for children. And I've got two kiddos myself. I've got a 20 and a 17-year-old. So we're past some of this, but it's still very near and dear. So we have to be vigilant. We have to be thoughtful about what it is that, not so much what we're doing. I mean, we know what we're not supposed to do, but watching for those behaviors in other people, because there's not a very few times is there a case where abuse has happened and everyone says, "Oh, I never saw that coming." It's usually, I can see now the pattern of what took place. I can see how this person did these things over the years. And that's the thing. If once you're trained, once you know what to look for, you can identify those patterns. And so the word to every parent in every child serving organization and folks within those is know what to look for, right? And that's what our training officer, there's others too, but we would love to say ours is out there for the best purposes. But the idea of really identifying those patterns, of being vigilant, again, I mentioned the groomer earlier. The groomer will always make you think they are trusted, and you're going to fall for it. And it's a matter of being super vigilant. If you know what to look for, you won't fall for it. But they're going to try to make you think everything's okay. They may even solve a problem for you and help you out. You're really, you trust them, and then they move on to then gain trust with children at the same time and as well, and then abuse the kids. So you want to know what you're looking for. But with conversations with kiddos, it really is, well, also what you want to be looking for, even in your organizations, is, are there ever times where kids are alone or adults are alone with children? These are things you want to prevent. Everybody looks at Penn State now and Jerry Sandusky in that situation, or Larry Nassar of gymnastics, and they say, "Oh my goodness, how did any of this stuff happen?" Well, they gained trust over the years and everyone just kind of accepted it. And so you want to be vigilant, asking questions about the organization as well. What do you allow? Do you allow, adults and kids to be in the locker rooms together, in the showers together, whatever that may look like? And so looking for best practices there where you can just kind of block out the whole opportunity for abuse. But the other side of this is back to the conversation with kids. Communication, I say, is every organization's primary problem, and a family is an organization, right? And so communicating well, being real and transparent and honest, age appropriate, but being very communicative with your kiddos, telling them, hey, these are the things, I mean, back even to the doctor ages, right? Who can look where and who can touch where,
Mm.
right? Some of those really kind of primary fundamental conversations, but you continue that into the older years even, but you're talking to them about um, what things are going on at school. You want to have those conversations at school or YMCA or church or whatever it may be. You want to ask them what's going on. You want to know who's involved in their lives, who has access to them, who's speaking to them, talking to them about healthy boundaries, who should they be around, who shouldn't they be around, situations, the phone. Oh my goodness, this is just from an exposure standpoint, I could just show you the phone, hold it up, and now you've seen something pornography wise, and that's often the abuser's toolbox of things. But helping them to know what to look at, what not to look at. Very tender topics, very precious topics, because our kids are precious. We want to protect them, but
Yeah.
we have to have those conversations, and that's unfortunate. But somebody else may if we don't.
Yeah, one thing we've done, and I want to get back to what you do with how you help churches and organizations, but
Sure.
one thing we do is we have a safe word. So if they're out somewhere and they call us, they have one word to say to us, and it's a sentence, it's a phrase, but we hear that, we know to come, we say yes, no problem, and we go get them.
Yeah.
So
So
we've,
good.
we've we've
So
got
good.
that in place, and just having this conversation reminded me that we get to revisit that conversation because we haven't had that in a while. But so, David, how does Ministry Safe help churches, nonprofits, and organizations create safer environments for children and vulnerable individuals? Because it's both the older, like you said, there's also adults who are vulnerable.
Yeah, yeah. So the way our whole organization works is we have and I'm going to answer the specific question in this, but we have a $400 a year membership fee. And once so let's say it's a church, because again, 95% of our organizations are churches. They have access with that $400 a year to it's our document library, which is really beyond even just sex abuse prevention. It's facility you want to rent out your facility, right? So it's all things created by our legal team that are legal documents, which if you pay per hour, it's really a lot of money. But so we have all these different resources. You want to rent out your building, you want to have a summer camp policy, you want to have, all these different policies and procedures that do revolve around kids, but it goes beyond that. So that's accessible once you pay the $400. But then we really focus on the training side and the background check side. And so what we really highlight is a 5-part safety system. That's really what we focus on. And two of those parts are trainings and background checks. The other parts are actually doing it, right? And then monitoring that as well as you go along. But the training side, if anyone ever says, oh, I've done Ministry Safe, what they really mean is what 90, probably 7% of people mean is they've taken one of our courses, and it's the sexual abuse awareness training. And it's about an hour and a half long, and it is all the things to watch for and look for, things you shouldn't do, but also, again, back to that whole being a keen observer of other people. So that's part of the training that we go into. And really, what we say is we're about protecting children and those who serve them. So we really do want to protect the kids, but also the adults too, from false claims, right? We want to protect them from any kind of situation like that. But so what we do is we provide training. That is a key piece. And that's really the number one thing that we do that helps prevent abuse. We also are heavy in the background check space. However, the background check space it's good. It's a low-hanging fruit. It's kind of a barrier to entry. Everybody has to do background checks. But background checks don't give us all the information, partly because of some of the laws that exist and how far you can go back, but mainly because the majority of abusers are not in the system. They are
Mm.
not people that have been arrested. They are people that have never been detected. They have not been sent to jail. They've never gone to trial for things. Unfortunately, churches and other organizations have a history of kind of passing people along when they've done something bad in the church. It's, hey, just leave, just go away. There's no reporting of it. There's no prosecution of it. And so that's been true in the church and the other organizations too. But you think about so many times we hear the uncle, right, or some
Right,
relative, some family member, they're not in jail. They haven't been in the system.
right.
They're, they've taken advantage of the children in the family and around them in the neighborhood or wherever. And so background checks are important. They do catch some folks. In our team, we've got about 25 folks down there that actually work reports, and they celebrate when they catch somebody. They love it. But at the same time, training though is really knowing what to look for is the key piece in this, knowing behaviors, because Gosh, it's just critical. It's critical that we know how to protect our kiddos.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate when you said like an uncle or a family member or a friend of the family. A lot of times they won't, the abused won't say anything. So
Yeah,
then
yeah,
years and years and years go by before
yeah.
possibly something is said. And again, that person hasn't been in the system, and we don't know how many other people they've abused in the process. So I completely hear you there. David, what are the key elements of an effective abuse prevention program, and where do most organizations fall short?
Yeah, unfortunately, most organizations don't take this seriously until one of three things takes place. One, either they are close to or have had a victim scenario, right? Someone's been abused, either someone that they, either inside the organization, inside their church or sports club, has actually been abused, or there's a family member of someone's abused, right? That's when they begin to take it seriously. Or there's government legislation, or there's an insurance implication, right? And what is the reality is we have some insurance companies actually pay for the organizations to use Ministry Safe, and they still don't use it. And so it's not a topic that people want to talk about or deal with. But the reality of it is, let's say any organization that has an abuse claim, what happens is if that goes to court, right? Or let's say it's settled, one victim, the average expense right now to that is what insurance ends up paying out is about $2.5 million per victim per claim. And so when someone is found guilty, that's found true in court, then it's settled. It's about 2.5 million. If that goes to a trial, that number goes up to about $10.3 million per settlement or jury verdict and award. And so insurance companies have a high motivation to like, listen, we don't want to pay these things out. So we are actually seeing a lot more insurance companies now that are actually saying, hey, we're going to pay for you to use Ministry Safe because that's going to decrease the risk liability. And so, we're seeing those things take place, but my goodness, it's got to be a focus for folks. And it's unfortunately until something's making them think about it, they just don't want to because this is not a fun topic to talk about.
No, not at all. Yeah, I can see how they want to kind of like not go there. Can you see talking about insurance companies? Could you see the possibility of the insurance companies not insuring unless this is something that's been obviously, they get the training. Basically, in order to qualify for the insurance, the only thing left to do is you need to have this training in place before we will insure you. Do you see that possibly happening?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. So the domino effect of this, if you want to be inside a building serving kids, then you're going to have insurance. And part of that's going to have to be SAM or sexual abuse and molestation insurance coverage. The US market doesn't have a real big risk appetite for this. And so a lot of US carriers are pulling out of this. However, the UK market, they have a higher risk tolerance. And so we're seeing some of them enter into this space as well. So yeah, there is a real possibility that someone who's had coverage in the past, they're going to find that their insurance carrier just wanted to pull out of that altogether. And so, yeah, the risk is real because, yeah, people just don't take it seriously enough. And again, I hate that. I hate that we even have to, but it's the reality. Yeah, and you asked a moment ago about the 5-part safety system, and that is it is the background checks, it's training, it's actually monitoring, it's keeping people abreast of things. And so there's actually a deep dive of that. And these are just good practices. So whether it's Ministry Safe or not, but at ministrysafe.com, you can see a whole display of that 5-part safety system. And it goes into deeper detail on all those things. Those are just, even if no one ever subscribed to what we have, just reading that and being vigilant on that is going to be helpful for your organization that serves kids. And even just as a parent or a grandparent or an aunt or uncle, like what are the things you should be thinking about? And that'll help people think through some of those things.
Absolutely. Well, I hope the insurance companies make this a requirement because being a
Yeah.
mom and just being a human, whether it's children or vulnerable adults, like this should, I would love to see your mission. Like you said, I would love for the doors to close on your company because the
Yes.
problem is solved, right?
Yep,
And
we
I
would
say
too.
that with love.
Yep. Yep.
I
Well,
don't want
we would
anybody
take
out of
it.
business or out of work, but I would love to see this solution, this problem be solved because it just breaks my heart. And every time I hear something in my heart just breaks again. David, how is AI is on the rise, right? So I'm sure I'm sure that it's not been something that's been avoided by your organization. So because it's
Yeah.
everywhere and it's
Yep.
only getting bigger and more
Yep.
widely used. So how is AI and technology being used to enhance child protection efforts and what potential challenges also does it bring?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I love AI. I also serve as an adjunct professor, and I wrestle with AI all the time, and best uses, and did the student really write that paper or not? And so, but there are so many great uses for it. And for us, what we've found, and this is super interesting, so we are predominantly English speaking in all of our training videos, and we have a Spanish portion as well, but we're having more and more requests internationally. And what's true is that ministry safe protection of children doesn't really get legs until you have a rule of law. So in a country that doesn't care about protecting or doesn't focus on protecting kids, ministry safe's not going to be there just by and large, right? So I'm just going to say the Middle East as a general area, right? There aren't a lot of child protection laws in place. And so ministry isn't there. But where there are organizations that are US based and have a presence throughout the world, and they are using Ministry Safe, then they may want to carry that over. And so, actually, just in the last few weeks, we've had several international requests. And so, you talk about where does AI come into play? It comes into our translation work, really. So, we want to, get our content into their heart language. And so, how can we then go leverage AI to help us translate? Because a lot of the speakers of the countries that some of the mission agencies or different things, different places they're in, there's not necessarily a translator we have access to, but AI has been super helpful in order to get that, translated and in their hands. And just one more way for the people that are, again, international, but based out of the US, to protect kids, at least in their sphere, maybe their international school or whatever it may be where they're located. So that's really our biggest use right now. We use a little bit on the front end with customer support, some of those things, but the biggest use for AI right now is really the translation, which is just a really amazing field. I'm amazed at technology.
Yeah, and we need your trainings in every language out there. The whole world needs these trainings and this information. So I'm all for that technology helping you happen. So I'm excited for that. And you being an adjunct professor made me in talking about the students using AI for their papers made me laugh because my I have teenagers,
Yes.
they do a lot of more written paper I'm hearing these days. I know this is off topic, but I'm like, where's your work? I try to go into their system to see, and oh, mom, that was on paper. That was on paper. And I'm like, what are we going back in time? Like they're now moving on to paper, but I know why, because the teachers want to make sure that they're actually doing the work. And we're seeing that in colleges too, as well, which this, we're not going to get into this, but my question there is how is that preparing these students to go into the real world when they're working more on paper than necessarily on the computer and not using AI when AI is such a major force out there? But that's a whole different
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. It's a great topic too, though. But yeah, those are things I wrestle with all the time. It just
Yeah.
the very short aspect of that. What I often think is where I want my students, I teach a couple of different college level courses. And what I want them to do is interact and I want them to ask the questions. So at the end of the day, I guess, one of the things I wrestle with is do I care as much if they use AI to answer it? If they are faithfully engaging with AI to ask the good questions and learn something in the process. So I have to ask the question, did learning occur in that moment of them using AI to produce something that they had to have hopefully some idea of if it was accurate or not. But that's always a question. Did learning occur? And if that's the case, I'm okay with AI. But if it didn't, well, then we're going to rewrite the paper.
Yeah.
So they're going
And
to get a zero.
that's a good point because my day we memorized everything. And honestly, memorization, that was kind of what we were pushed to, like we just memorized it to get through the test. It was for
Yep,
three
yep,
days later. So did we really learn anything the way we did it back then in certain
yep.
instances too? Where and with AI, they're actually reading it, they're seeing it, they're typing it, they're doing a lot more with their senses than they are when we were just memorizing it. So good point there. And something I guess something that we'll see play out as we
Oh, we
progress
will
over
for
yeah,
sure.
we're going to learn a
Oh, we
lot
get more
upcoming
involved.
years. Yeah. So, question for you. What piece of advice, David, would you give to leaders who want to build a culture of safety and accountability in their organization?
Yeah. One is, what gets talked about gets done. And so just really promoting that as a topic, as an issue that needs to be addressed and keeping that at the forefront. The things that we keep at front of mind, the things that we keep on top of the list or keep talking about and bringing up. And so as any leader in a child serving organization or leader of a family or, even just influential in a family, Yeah, keeping that as a topic ongoing, and not from a fear-based perspective, but just a reality, right? The worst thing we can do is lock down and, totally protect our kids and never let them do anything. So
Mm.
we have to have this balance of things. But yeah, to keep it front of mind, keep talking about it, be vigilant, observe, and keep people trained on what to look for. That's the key.
Yeah, normalizing the conversation. Right? I
Yeah.
know that growing up in the 80s, these are things that are taboo. And, and like you said, what's the word I'm looking for? Not abuser. I don't know if that's it, is like somebody that's lurking in the shadows that you don't know. Unfortunately, in the 80s, there was a big case of a little boy that went missing. And
Yep.
that's not the norm, like you said. Yes, we have to worry about that and we should be cautious about it walking out from the mall or things like that. But that's not typically how it's going to happen. You need to be more aware of what's happening in your inner circle and in your
Yeah.
world, in your organization, in your church, and things like that. So thank you for being here. And I want to talk about business now, growth a little bit, if you're good. Ministry Safe's been around for a while now, and I'm sure you have all seen some ups and downs and had some challenges over the years with your growth. So can you share some of the challenges you've had with that Ministry Safe has had and how you've overcome them?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of just the reality, just the nature of the topic, right? Not everybody wants to deal with or talk with or go through the training that we offer. So that's a first challenge in itself. But again, there's one of three reasons people may take it seriously. But so as those challenges have taken place, it's really a word of mouth piece for us. And how do we continue to keep it top of mind, continue that conversation, and really in many ways leverage outside influences. This is part of when we think about business growth, when we think about who can help our business. And again, I hate to think about this as a business, but it is about how do we get to do more good in the world than what we're doing right now with what we offer. And so as we think about leveraging all of this, we think about leveraging relationships. And so sometimes it is insurance companies. Right now, we actually have my boss, our CEO and co-founder. They're overseas, and they are actually talking to insurance companies about some of these combination of things, and insurance companies coming into the U.S. markets and kind of helping push Ministry Safe into different organizations. And so leveraging relationships has been big in terms of getting past some of our hurdles, whether it be associations of churches or different dioceses from a Catholic perspective, or insurance groups, or larger sports organizations, or talking to national offices versus individual ones. So as we think about how does an individual church or an individual organization where there's boots on the ground, because that's where things happen, is the boots on the ground. But where can we, in trying to get that done, leverage relationships above that or around that can help influence and push them to think more broadly and think very intentionally about protecting kids. And so, yeah, that's been a hurdle, just, adoption. But outside influences we've been able to leverage and talk with and work with, that's been really helpful to overcome some of that.
Yeah, I'm sure like focusing on the connection, collaboration, building a network, building those relationships and partnerships is key to you all getting the word out too. Like you said, word of mouth is important. Another question for you is marketing. As far as being visible, staying top of mind, I'm sure that's something that's, marketing
Yeah.
strategy, 25 now. What are some of the things, or is there something that's leading your marketing strategy this year? You're like, this has been something that's really worked well for us. We're going to double down on this. And is there something maybe that you're like, we're going to kind of step aside from this marketing strategy or lessen that route because it hasn't worked as effectively as we hoped?
Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting again, just because of the nature of the topic, it doesn't lend our ministry safe to be really cute and creative and fun on social media, which is so often such a great place to do really creative things. But that's just not where we're able to shine in that way. And so social has been very limited for us, really. We can promote, look, some of what we do, we can highlight the problem really of child sex abuse in general, but what we found is one, just simply being super accessible in a digital presence. And so that's where I would encourage any organization to have a significant digital presence. During COVID, the training side of what we do again, I mean, lockdown was a little bit wonky in itself for everybody. But the fact that I don't know if we're a SaaS company in the, truest definition, but But what we have is software as a service, right? You pay a subscription fee, you're able to access our trainings, and then you learn from there. And that just scales for us, right? We've done it once or twice. We've got it in place. You pay for it, it goes. So from a revenue generation side to keep things going, that works well. But having an easily accessible digital platform, whether the training videos you offer, whatever the offer is, making sure that has been super accessible, easy to use, easy to understand, easy to navigate, right? Great UI experience. That's been key. And then just the word of mouth has been helpful for us. People recognize, especially child service organizations, they know it's a need, whether or not they want to talk about it or not. But it's low hanging fruit a lot of times. But what they see is insurance companies say you've got to do this, and so they'll hop in. But yeah, the biggest things for us have been probably word of mouth, and then just having an easy to use platform.
Yeah. David, if I could say, here's, magic wand, and there we could go poof on one thing or one challenge you're having, Ministry Safe is having right now that could be taken away, what would that be and why?
Oh my goodness. There's so many great things we would do with one. But if I only had to pick one, if I only had to pick one, it would probably be, again, just people taking it seriously. That awareness and action would be in place. Again, people will say it's important, but will you go do anything about that? Will you be vigilant in that space? So really just the action, because the awareness is there. People know it's important. And so I would probably move people to actually take steps and respond to it, respond to the offer we have.
Yeah. Be proactive versus reactive, right?
Yeah. All day long. Oh my goodness, all day long.
Yeah. So David, one last question for you. If we were able to come back in a year and revisit this conversation, which I would love to, again, this is a new podcast, so thank you for being a yes to this. Would love to
Yeah.
revisit in a year and see all the progress and all the things that you all have created. What would success look like for Ministry Safe in 12 months from now?
Boy, so we are actually currently in the process of merging with another larger organization that's in the church space. So kind of going a church vertical, software space. So a full integration into that is going to be really successful. What that means for us, and the reason we wanted that is really because they represent another 80,000 organizations. And so just, late last year when all this was kind of going into play, our founder said, we've been in this 25 years and we're in about 25,000 or 20 years. We've been in about 25,000 organizations. And they said, we don't have another 25 years to do this. So how can we scale this? How can we go further, faster? And so by merging in with another organization that's already, embedded in 80,000 others, that's just going to be quicker access for us. And so yeah, success for us is going to be that we are, fully immersed and fully integrated in that, and that we've seen mass adoption in that space, but also that we've seen more and more people really take action on protecting their kiddos. If they don't, then it's unfortunate that bad things may happen, and so we want to see kids not ever be victims, but we want to see them flourish as innocent children they're supposed to be.
Absolutely. And I pray that we're able to support you in getting that mission and the word out more
Yeah.
through you being here today. So thank you so much for your time. David, how can people listening connect with you and learn more about Ministry Safe?
Yeah, absolutely. So ministrysafe.com is our website. And so if there's ever any questions about what we offer or what's there, you can explore that. Abusepreventionsystems.com is similar to that, and then protecting vulnerable adults. But me personally, it's dchase@ministrysafe.com. That's the email address. Folks can reach me if they ever have questions about that or anything with business or scale or any of that. But yeah, our website, ministrysafe.com, and dchase@ministrysafe.com.
Amazing. So if you're listening, for you listening, please connect with David. Such a great guy. Learn more, especially if you have a business or you're involved with an organization, church. Bring this information to them. Let them know it's available. We get to protect our children. We get to protect our vulnerable humans out there so this doesn't happen and we can, I hate to say it, close the doors on that. So we
Close
don't
it down.
ever have another child or another adult, vulnerable adult or human ever go through this again. So thank you, David, again for being here and for taking the time. Is there anything that you'd like to share that I didn't ask you or we didn't touch on?
I think one of the things I've found in business. So I've done a variety of things. My resume actually looks a little schizophrenic if you start to look at it from end to end. But I've been in for-profit business, nonprofit business, worked in the church, worked in education, a variety of things. But operations has been really, really a focus for me. But what I've found just is the collaborative nature of working with others has been tremendously helpful. I mentioned just a second ago that just in for-profit business, nonprofit, all these different things. But I worked for an energy company for a number of years in Texas, and we ended up in a partnership with the city of Arlington, actually where I live, and they were able to put in kind of a flyer for us and all of the water bills. That went out to the residents. And so, again, we just established this relationship with the city, and then they went on behalf of Nessa as a secondary sales force, promoting us to every resident of Arlington inside their water bill. So everybody saw that. Same thing even here with Ministry Safe, right? Partnering with the insurance companies who are now promoting us to all of their clients and customers. And so I can't overemphasize, I guess, the value of the collaborative nature of working with others, finding others, building good relationships, never burning a bridge. Oh my goodness, I can't count the number of times that things have kind of come back full circle. Like, oh, hey, I met you like 15 years ago. Glad I had a good interaction with you then, right? Glad there's a good relationship. But maintaining those good relationships, establishing great collaboration agreements and relationships, and that just really pays dividends on the secondary sales market of what we're trying to do, or anybody, anyone that can go be a voice for you, that's a win all day long.
Yeah.
So
Such a good key point because collaboration is currency
yeah,
and your network is your net worth. And it's not always all about the money, but again, the money provides solutions, right? And it allows you to do more good when you have that revenue coming in. And to keep your doors open for you listening that have a business, to keep your doors open, you need to have the revenue. Collaborations are a great way of doing it. It allows you to meet more people. Social media, like you said, it's a little challenging for you to get that, to get what the mass messaging out there that you want to do because it's not a fun thing to talk about. But also social media in general, especially if you're newer in building your business, it's a little tougher space to crack right now. There's other areas that are more blue ocean and than red ocean, like social media. Not to say you shouldn't be there. You should be there, right? You want to get your message out. It's
yep,
a great
yep,
platform to do it, but it's also great. Don't underestimate the power of collaboration with your local organizations and businesses, your networking groups. Don't just think of it the internet and the virtual. The virtual is great, but don't forget about your local opportunities as well. Like David was saying, the water company, there's things that people will do for you. And if it's create a win-win, how can I help you? And when you're
yeah.
helping others, guess what? It's a reciprocal, it's most usually an automatic reciprocal. Oh, well, how can I help you? Right? Type of thing.
There's a great line in the Old Testament book of Jeremiah, Jeremiah 29:7. It says, "Seek the welfare of the city, and in doing so, you'll find your welfare." And
Wow.
so it's a great idea of just great scripture truth of, hey, look out for other people, and you'll find your purpose in that.
Yeah, and people look out for you in return. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, I love that, David. So beautiful, beautiful way to
Love it.
end this. Thank you, David, for being here
Yeah.
today. Thank you for listening to David and I today. If you're watching us on YouTube right now, we kind of match,
I like
but
it. Yeah, we do. Yep.
we color coordinated our outfits. No, I'm just kidding. We're just in sync that way. But if you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button so we can spread these, David and interviews to help more people and more organizations by you subscribing, and leave David a comment. Let him know you heard him here. Connect with Ministry Safe. Connect with him. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, such as Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever, and you can leave a review, 5 stars, please do so. Hit the 5 star button and also leave us a comment and review. We would love to see that because, again, that also helps us help more people. And if you're feeling stuck and you're feeling like I'm doing all the things, especially in the virtual space, online space, and I don't feel like my business is growing the way I want it to grow, then go get our Spotlight to Scale blueprint. It'll show you exactly the steps to shine the light on your business and get more visible. You can go to spotlighttoscale.com/blueprint and grab that free download. Reach out to David. He's on social media. He's at dchase@ministrysafe.com. And you can go to ministrysafe.com to learn more about their trainings and what they can do to help you in your organization. Thank you, David, so much. So good.
Thank you, Heidi. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here with us today on the Business Growth
Yeah.
Spotlight. We'll see you on the next episode.